A widowed father was fired for taking a carton of milk for his hungry daughter. 3 days later, the entire board of the bank was begging him to come back. But to understand how any of that happened, you need to know what kind of man Ethan Callaway was. Tuesday mornings had always been difficult. Especially since Elena died. The house felt too quiet without her laughter. Her yellow coffee mug still sat beside the sink, exactly where she'd left it almost 3 years earlier. Ethan washed it every Sunday, though he never used it. He wasn't ready. "Daddy?" A small voice came from upstairs. "I'm awake." Ethan smiled despite the heaviness in his chest. "I'm coming, sweetheart." 8-year-old Lily was sitting on her bed when he entered her room. Her brown curls were tangled, and her cheeks looked unusually pink. "You don't look so good, kiddo." She tried to smile. "My head hurts." Ethan placed his hand on her forehead and immediately felt the heat. She was burning up. "Oh, honey." He knelt beside her. "I think you have a fever." Lily frowned. "Can I still go to school? We have art class today." That made him laugh softly. Even sick, she didn't want to miss art class. "You really love painting, don't you?" She nodded. "Mommy said I got it from her." The mention of Elena always felt like someone gently touching an old bruise. It seemed she was right. He brushed a curl away from Lily's face. "But today, I think we stay home." An hour later, after giving her medicine, Ethan called his manager at the bank. No answer. He left a message. Then another. By 8:30, Lily's fever had gone down slightly. "Maybe I can work for a few hours," he whispered to himself. He had already missed 2 days the previous month when Lily caught the flu. Single parents didn't have many options. And they certainly didn't have the luxury of losing their jobs. At 9 o'clock, the school nurse called. "Mr. Callaway, Lily's fever is getting worse. Someone needs to pick her up immediately." Ethan closed his eyes. Of course. Today of all days. His mother had passed away years earlier. Elena's parents lived in Arizona. The babysitter was visiting her own family. There was no one else. No one. Lily looked up at him from the couch. "Am I causing trouble?" The question broke something inside him. He sat beside her. "You could never cause trouble, sweetheart." She looked unconvinced. "You missed work because of me before." Ethan wrapped his arms around her. "Listen to me." She lifted her eyes. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." A tiny smile appeared on her face. "Really? Really?" He kissed the top of her head. Then he looked at the clock. 10 minutes later, he made a decision. He packed Lily's coloring books. Her blanket. A bottle of water. And the small stuffed rabbit she slept with every night. Then he grabbed his favorite coffee mug. The one with crooked letters painted in blue. Best daddy in the world. Lily had made it in kindergarten. It was the most valuable thing on his desk. As they walked toward the front door, Ethan glanced at Elena's photograph on the hallway table. She was laughing in the picture. Holding baby Lily in her arms. For a moment, he stood there in silence. Then he picked up the frame. "Looks like it's one of those days, sweetheart," he said softly. "I wish you were here." Lily squeezed his hand. "We'll be okay, Daddy." He smiled. Sometimes children carried more courage than adults. "I know we will." He took a deep breath, opened the front door, and stepped outside. Neither of them knew that before the day was over, a carton of milk would change all of their lives forever. By the time Ethan and Lily reached the bank, the morning rush had already begun. Customers filled the lobby. Phones rang. Printers hummed. Employees hurried from one desk to another with cups of coffee in their hands. For 11 years, Ethan Callaway had walked through those glass doors almost every weekday. He knew the security guards by name. He remembered the birthdays of the tellers. He had trained half the people on the investment floor. To most of them, he wasn't just another employee. He was the kind man who stayed late to help new hires and quietly paid for lunch when someone was struggling. "Morning, Ethan," called Marissa from customer service. Then she noticed Lily. "Oh, honey, are you okay?" Lily gave a small nod and leaned against her father's side. "Fever," Ethan explained. "I didn't have anyone to watch her." Marissa's face softened. Poor thing. She disappeared for a moment and returned with a small blanket from the break room. "Here. She can use this." "Thank you," Ethan said. He meant it. Little acts of kindness mattered more than people realized. He settled Lily in the empty chair beside his desk and handed her a coloring book. "If you get tired, you can sleep, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." She pulled out her crayons. For a while, everything seemed manageable. Then the elevator doors opened. The entire floor grew quieter. Genevieve Sterling had arrived. She had been the bank's new CEO for less than 3 months, but everyone already knew her reputation. Brilliant. Demanding. Unforgiving. She walked through the office in a perfectly tailored navy suit, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. People straightened in their chairs as she passed. Her eyes landed on Lily almost immediately. She stopped. "Whose child is this?" The room became very still. Ethan stood. "My daughter, ma'am." A long silence followed. "And why," she asked calmly, "is your daughter in my bank?" "She has a fever. I couldn't find anyone to watch her." Genevieve folded her arms. "This is a financial institution, Mr. Calloway. Not a daycare center." Several employees looked down at their desks. Ethan kept his voice respectful. "I understand. She'll stay quietly beside me. I'll finish my work and take her home as soon as possible." The CEO looked at the little girl. Lily had already lowered her eyes, as though she had done something wrong. Genevieve's expression didn't change. "See that this doesn't happen again." Without another word, she continued walking. The room exhaled. Marissa released the breath she had been holding. "Well," she whispered, "that was uncomfortable." Ethan forced a smile. "It's okay." But when he looked at his daughter, she was staring at her coloring book without drawing anything. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart." She looked up slowly. "Am I not supposed to be here?" His heart sank. He reached over and squeezed her little hand. "No, baby." Then he smiled gently. "You're exactly where you need to be." An hour passed. Then another. Lily colored quietly beside his desk, her little tongue peeking out whenever she concentrated on a drawing. Ethan checked on her every few minutes. Her fever seemed lower. That was a relief. At least until he heard a tiny voice beside him. "Daddy." He turned. "What is it, sweetheart?" She looked up at him with tired eyes. "I'm hungry." The words were so soft that they almost disappeared beneath the sound of ringing phones. Ethan glanced at the clock. Almost noon. Of course she was hungry. She had barely eaten breakfast. "Okay," he said gently. "Let's get you something." Lily smiled weakly. He stood and looked around the office. Most employees were still busy. The cafeteria downstairs sold snacks, milk, and sandwiches. He reached into his pocket. Empty. Then he remembered. He had left his wallet in the kitchen that morning while rushing to get Lily dressed. He quietly sighed. Payday wasn't until Friday, and the last few weeks had been difficult. Hospital bills from Lily's previous illness still sat unopened on the dining room table. But a carton of milk cost almost nothing. He could take it now and pay before leaving. No one would mind. At least, that's what he thought. "Come on, sweetheart." They walked downstairs together. The cafeteria was nearly empty. He opened the refrigerator and took one small carton of milk. Then he grabbed a package of crackers. Lily's face brightened immediately. "Thank you, Daddy. Let's eat upstairs." But before they reached the door, a voice stopped them. "Mr. Calloway." He turned. Genevieve Sterling stood near the entrance. Two managers were beside her. She looked at the milk. Then at the crackers. Then back at him. "Have you paid for those?" Ethan kept his voice calm. "I left my wallet at home this morning. I was going to pay before I left." Her expression hardened. "So you're taking company property without permission?" "It's a carton of milk and a package of crackers." "That's not what I asked." Lily's little fingers tightened around the milk. Several employees had already stopped walking. They were watching. Ethan felt his face grow warm. "I wasn't stealing." Genevieve crossed her arms. "If you can't even afford milk for your daughter, perhaps you shouldn't have brought her here." The entire cafeteria went silent. Ethan stared at her. Then she looked directly at Lily. "And maybe your mother would have made better choices." No one moved. No one breathed. Lily hugged the carton of milk to her chest. Her lower lip trembled. "My mommy died." Her tiny voice cracked on the last word. A horrible silence filled the room. One of the managers looked away. A teller covered her mouth. For the first time, Ethan's composure nearly broke. He slowly knelt beside his daughter. "It's okay, baby." But Genevieve's face remained cold. She looked at security. "Escort them out." A gasp came from somewhere behind them. Ethan stood. He picked up his daughter. She buried her face in his shoulder. Then he looked at the CEO. For a long moment, he said nothing at all. Finally, he spoke. Quietly. Respectfully. "You didn't humiliate me today." He gently rubbed Lily's back. "You humiliated a little girl who misses her mother." No one in the room would ever forget the look on his face. Or the tears silently sliding down his daughter's cheeks. No one moved. Even the security guards looked uncertain. One of them, a gray-haired man named Carl, had worked at the bank almost as long as Ethan had. He looked from the little girl to the CEO. "Ma'am." He began carefully. Genevieve didn't even turn toward him. "Escort them out." Carl swallowed. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped aside. "I can't do that." A few employees looked up in surprise. The CEO's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Carl cleared his throat. "I said I can't do that." He glanced at Lily, who was still crying quietly against her father's shoulder. "I'm a grandfather. I have a granddaughter about her age." Silence. The entire cafeteria seemed to stop breathing. Genevieve's expression turned icy. "Are you refusing a direct order?" Carl hesitated. Then he nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." The CEO looked furious. "Then you're suspended pending review." A collective gasp swept through the room. Ethan couldn't believe what he had just heard. A good man was being punished simply for showing compassion. He adjusted Lily in his arms. "Please don't do this," he said softly. Carl gave him a sad smile. "It's okay, Ethan." Then he looked at the little girl. "I hope you feel better soon, sweetheart." Lily managed a tiny nod. Genevieve turned back toward Ethan. "As for you, Mr. Calloway, your employment with this bank is terminated effective immediately." The words echoed through the cafeteria. Terminated. Just like that. 11 years. Gone. A young teller suddenly spoke. "You can't fire him over milk." Everyone turned. The teller looked terrified but continued anyway. "He didn't steal anything." Another employee nodded. Then another. The room was changing. People were beginning to speak. Genevieve's voice became sharper. Anyone who disagrees with my decision is free to join Mr. Calloway outside. The room fell silent again. People looked down at the floor. Some looked ashamed. Others looked angry. Ethan understood. Everyone had families. Everyone needed their jobs. He couldn't let this become their burden. "It's all right," he said quietly. He looked around at the people he had worked beside for more than a decade. "Thank you." Then he returned to his desk. The entire office watched him. No one touched their keyboards. No one answered their phones. Ethan picked up his jacket. His framed photo of Elena and Lily. And finally, the crooked coffee mug. Best daddy in the world. He held it for a moment. Then he slipped it carefully into his bag. Lily lifted her head from his shoulder. "Are we going home, Daddy?" He smiled, though it took every ounce of strength he had. "Yeah, baby. Did I make you lose your job?" The question struck him harder than the firing itself. He stopped walking. Slowly, he knelt in front of her. "No." She looked unconvinced. "But if I wasn't hungry?" Ethan gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "Listen to me." She looked into his eyes. "You could never ruin my life." He kissed her forehead. "You're my life." And for the first time that day, several people in the office quietly began to cry. The ride home was quiet. Rain had begun to fall, and the windshield wipers moved back and forth with a soft rhythm. Lily sat in the back seat, holding her stuffed rabbit and the carton of milk she had never opened. Every now and then, Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She looked so small. Too small to understand why grown-ups could be cruel. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. Are we going to be okay?" The question hung in the car. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he remembered another rainy afternoon 3 years earlier. A hospital room. The steady beeping of machines. Elena lying in bed, looking far too young to be saying goodbye. "We'll be okay," he finally said. Lily nodded and looked out the window. A few minutes later, they pulled into the driveway of their little white house. As soon as they stepped inside, Lily climbed onto the couch and curled beneath her blanket. Ethan tucked it around her. "I'll make you some soup." She looked at him carefully. "You don't seem mad." He forced a smile. "I'm not. But you lost your job." He sat beside her. "When your mom was alive, she used to say something." "What?" "That bad days don't last forever." Lily thought about that. Did Mommy have bad days? He laughed softly. "Oh, yes. Lots of them." The little girl smiled. Then, after a moment, she asked, "Do you miss her today?" The question hit him harder than he expected. Because the truth was, he missed her every day. More than I can explain. Lily reached for his hand. "I miss her too." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "I wish she could tell us what to do." Ethan looked toward the hallway. Toward the small room at the end of it. The room he rarely entered. Elena's study. He stood slowly. Maybe she already did. Lily looked confused. But he was already walking down the hallway. The room smelled faintly of lavender. Everything was exactly as she had left it. The books. The photographs. The blue scarf hanging behind the door. At the bottom shelf of her desk sat a small wooden box. He hadn't opened it in almost a year. His fingers trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside were old letters. A few photographs. And beneath them, a thick envelope. He stared at it. His name was written across the front. In Elena's handwriting. For Ethan. If the time ever comes. His heart began to pound. Slowly, he opened the envelope. Inside were several documents. and one handwritten letter. He unfolded it carefully. The first line stole the breath from his lungs. My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, then something has happened, and I need you to remember the promise you made to me. He sat down heavily in her chair. Outside, the rain continued to fall. And for the first time since leaving the bank, Ethan realized that today had never really been about losing his job. It was about a promise. A promise he had made to the woman he loved. And hidden inside that envelope was a secret that would change everything. Ethan read the first page twice. Then a third time. Because his mind refused to believe what his eyes were seeing. The letter was dated only 3 weeks before Elena died. My love. If you're opening this letter, it means life didn't give us the future we planned. And if that's true, I need you to remember something. None of this money was ever meant to change who we are. It was only meant to protect Lily, ****. Money? Ethan frowned. He looked at the stack of documents beneath the letter. Trust agreements. Investment statements. Legal forms. At the very top was a familiar name. Callaway Family Trust. He slowly turned the page. Then he froze. The number at the bottom of the statement made no sense. $90,247,000. He blinked. Looked again. The number didn't change. $90 million. A strange sound escaped his throat. For a moment, he simply sat there, staring. Then memories came rushing back. Elena insisting that they never worry about the future. Elena asking him to meet with her attorney before she entered hospice. Elena taking his hand and saying, "Promise me you'll protect it for her." At the time, he had been too consumed by grief to ask questions. He thought she meant their little house. Their savings. The life insurance policy. Not this. Never this. His phone suddenly rang. The sound nearly made him jump. The screen showed a name he hadn't seen in months. Daniel Mercer. Their family attorney. Ethan answered. Hello? Ethan. Daniel's voice was calm. I've been trying to reach you all afternoon. I'm sorry. It's been a difficult day. There was a pause. I heard. Ethan frowned. You heard? The banking world is smaller than people think. For the first time that day, Ethan almost laughed. Of course. News traveled quickly. I'm fine, he said. No, Daniel replied gently. I don't think you are. Silence filled the room. Then the attorney spoke again. Did you open Elena's letter? Ethan looked at the documents on the desk. Yes. And now you know. I don't understand. Daniel's voice softened. Your wife came from old money, Ethan. Very old money. He closed his eyes. Elena had rarely spoken about her family. Only that they were complicated. Only that she had left home when she was young. You never told me. She didn't want you to know. Why? Because she wanted to be loved for who she was. The room suddenly felt very small. Daniel continued. The trust was created for Lily when she was born. Elena made you the sole trustee. Ethan looked again at the number. $90 million. No. More than that. The statement was dated 6 months ago. The investments had probably grown since then. Daniel. Yes? What am I supposed to do with all this? The attorney was quiet for several seconds. Then he said something that made Ethan's heart stop. Actually, that's why I called. Another pause. The trust crossed $100 million this morning. Outside, thunder rolled across the dark sky. And for the second time that day, Ethan's entire world changed. For a long time, Ethan didn't say a word. $100 million. The number sounded unreal. Like something from another person's life. Not his. Not the life of a man who worried about grocery bills and school supplies. Not the life of a father who had just lost his job over a carton of milk. "Are you still there?" Daniel asked. "Yes." Ethan rubbed his forehead. I don't understand any of this." "Then let me explain." He leaned back in Elena's chair. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. When Elena's grandfather died, Daniel began, she inherited a substantial amount of money. Ethan frowned. "She never mentioned that." "No. Because she refused most of it." That surprised him. Refused it? She walked away from her family's business and nearly all of the fortune. But her grandfather insisted on creating one trust that no one could touch. For Lily. Exactly. Ethan looked at the papers again. $100 million. All because a grandfather had loved a little girl he would never meet. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because Elena trusted you more than anyone." The words settled heavily in his heart. Daniel continued. "She told me something once." "What?" "She said, Ethan knows the value of every dollar because he's earned every dollar he's ever had." Tears stung his eyes. That sounded exactly like her. She believed money was safest in the hands of a good man. Silence filled the room. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "There's something else." Ethan looked up. "The trust is currently managed through Sterling National Bank." He blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The majority of Lily's investments are held by your bank." A strange feeling settled in his stomach. "How much is the majority?" Daniel took a breath. "Almost 40%. Ethan sat upright. 40%. That wasn't just another account. That was enormous. "Tomorrow morning, I need your instructions." "My instructions?" "As trustee, you have complete authority to move the assets." The room suddenly felt colder. Images from earlier flooded his mind. Lily clutching her milk. Her trembling voice. "My mommy died." Then Genevieve's words. "Maybe your mother would have made better choices." His hands slowly tightened around the phone. "Daniel." "Yes?" "What happens if I move the trust?" There was a long pause. Then the attorney answered carefully. "The bank would notice." "How much would they notice?" Another pause. "Enough that the board of directors would call an emergency meeting." Ethan stared at the rain outside the window. He wasn't an angry man. Never had been. And he wasn't interested in revenge. But suddenly one thought entered his mind. One simple thought. Could he really trust a bank that had humiliated his daughter? A little girl. A child who had done nothing wrong. He closed his eyes. Then he heard small footsteps behind him. "Daddy?" Lily stood in the doorway, wrapped in her blanket. She looked sleepy. "You look sad." He opened his arms. She walked over and climbed onto his lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered. "Did Mommy's letter help?" Ethan looked at his daughter. Then at the papers on the desk. Slowly, he nodded. "Yes, sweetheart." She smiled. "Good." Then she rested her head against his chest. And for the first time that day, Ethan knew exactly what he had to do. Ethan barely slept that night. After carrying Lily back to bed, he remained in Elena's study for hours. The letter lay open on the desk. Beside it sat the investment statements and trust documents. More than $100 million. Even now, the number didn't feel real. But one sentence from Elena's letter kept returning to him. Protect it for her. Not grow it. Not spend it. Protect it. He looked at the framed photograph beside the desk. It had been taken at a county fair years ago. Elena was laughing while holding a giant stuffed bear. Lily had been only 3. It was one of his favorite pictures because it captured exactly who his wife had been. Kind. Warm. The kind of person who always bought extra groceries for a struggling neighbor. The kind of person who once drove 40 miles to bring soup to a sick friend. She would never have cared about the money. She would have cared about what the money could do. And she would have cared about their daughter. At nearly 2 in the morning, Ethan finally stood and walked into the kitchen. He poured himself a glass of water. Then he noticed something sitting on the counter. The unopened carton of milk. Lily had brought it home. He stared at it for a long time. A carton of milk. Less than $3. $3 had cost him his job. No. Not the job. Something much more important. His daughter had learned that day that adults could humiliate a child. That kindness wasn't guaranteed. That some people looked at a little girl and saw inconvenience instead of pain. The thought made his chest tighten. His phone buzzed. A text message. Marissa. How's Lily? A second message arrived. Everyone's talking about what happened today. Then another. People are furious. He didn't reply immediately. A few moments later, another message appeared. You didn't deserve this, Ethan. Neither did she, asterisk asterisk. He closed his eyes. That wasn't what hurt the most. The worst part had happened in the car. He could still hear her small voice. Should I stop drinking milk so you don't lose another job? No child should ever think like that. No child. He picked up the carton and slowly placed it in the refrigerator. Then he looked out the kitchen window. The rain had stopped. The sky was beginning to clear. Suddenly, his phone rang. Daniel again. Sorry for calling so late, the attorney said. It's okay. I need an answer first thing in the morning. Ethan knew exactly what he meant. The trust. The bank. The future. Daniel's voice softened. I know this is overwhelming. It is. And I know you're not the kind of man who acts out of anger. Ethan looked toward Lily's bedroom. No, he said quietly. I'm not. A long pause followed. Then Daniel asked. So what would you like me to prepare? Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he thought about Elena. He thought about his promise. And he thought about the little girl sleeping down the hall. Finally, he spoke. I want every account closed. Silence. Then Daniel said softly. All of them? Every single one. He took a slow breath. I no longer trust that bank with my daughter's future. On the other end of the line, the attorney said nothing for several seconds. Then he replied. Understood. After the call ended, Ethan stood alone in the quiet kitchen. He had no idea that by noon the next day, the entire leadership of Sterling National Bank would be in absolute panic. The next morning began like any other at Sterling National Bank. Employees arrived with coffee cups in their hands. Computers powered on. Phones started ringing. And on the 32nd floor, CEO Genevieve Sterling walked into the executive conference room carrying a tablet and a list of quarterly goals. She had slept perfectly. As far as she was concerned, the previous day had been an example of strong leadership. Rules were rules. Emotions only made people weak. At exactly 9:17 a.m., the door opened. The bank's chief financial officer, Robert Hayes, stepped inside. He looked pale. Genevieve, he said, we have a problem. She didn't look up from her tablet. What kind of problem? The Callaway Trust. That made her pause. The what? Robert swallowed. The Callaway Family Trust. She frowned. I don't recognize the name. That's because almost no one does. Something in his voice made her put the tablet down. What happened? The trustee has ordered all accounts closed. Silence. She folded her hands. How much are we talking about? The CFO looked at her for several long seconds. Then he answered. A little over $100 million. The room seemed to stop. What? He slid a document across the table. She looked down. The number was right there. $100,483,217. For the first time that morning, Genevieve's confidence cracked. That's impossible. It's not. She looked up. Who is the trustee? Robert hesitated. Then he said the name. Ethan Calloway. The world went completely silent. For several seconds, she simply stared at him. No. That couldn't be right. Not the man from the cafeteria. Not the employee who couldn't pay for milk. Not the widowed father carrying a sick little girl. You must be mistaken. I'm not. Another executive entered the room, looking equally alarmed. The board has already been notified. Genevieve slowly stood. How could one employee control a trust that size? He doesn't own the money, Robert explained. He's the trustee. Then who owns it? His daughter. The words hit her like a physical blow. His daughter. The little girl. The child she had thrown out of the bank. Suddenly she remembered the small voice. My mommy died. She remembered the carton of milk. The stuffed rabbit. The tears. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Not fear. Something worse. Shame. The conference room door opened again. This time it was the chairman of the board. 72-year-old Henry Whitmore looked furious. Tell me, he said, that we did not fire the trustee of one of our largest accounts over a carton of milk. No one answered. No one had to. Because the silence told him everything. He closed his eyes. Then he spoke quietly. Get Ethan Calloway on the phone. Robert looked down. We already tried. And? He isn't answering. The chairman's face turned grim. Then find him. A long silence followed. Because for the first time in many years, the leadership of Sterling National Bank was afraid. And somewhere across town, Ethan Calloway was sitting at his kitchen table, helping his daughter color a picture of a rainbow. At 10:30 that morning, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table with Lily. Her fever had finally broken. She was wearing her favorite yellow pajamas and drawing pictures with a box of crayons. What is this one? Ethan asked. She smiled proudly. It's our family. He looked at the page. There was a stick figure with curly hair. Another with a blue shirt. And a third figure with wings. His throat tightened. Mommy's an angel now, Lily explained softly. He swallowed hard and smiled. I think she'd like this picture. Lily nodded and continued coloring. Then the doorbell rang. Once. Then again. Then a third time. Ethan frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the front door, he froze. 3 people stood on his porch. Robert Hayes. The chairman of the board. And behind them, Genevieve Sterling. The CEO looked completely different from the woman he had seen the day before. She seemed pale. Smaller somehow. Ethan, Robert said carefully, may we come in? He looked from one face to another. Then stepped aside. Lily peeked around the corner. Daddy, who is it? No one you need to worry about, sweetheart. The executives entered the living room. Their eyes immediately landed on the drawing spread across the coffee table. The crayons. The stuffed rabbit. The small blanket on the couch. The house was simple. Warm. Nothing about it suggested great wealth. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Calloway, we're here because we've made a terrible mistake. Ethan said nothing. Genevieve looked at him. Then at Lily. For the first time in a very long while, she didn't seem to know what to say. Finally, she spoke. I owe you an apology. Silence. She took a slow breath. What I said yesterday was cruel and unacceptable. Lily looked up from her drawing. The little girl didn't say anything. She simply held her crayon. Genevieve continued. I judged you without knowing anything about your situation. Ethan folded his arms. You judged my daughter. The words hung in the room. No one moved. No one breathed. The CEO looked down. You're right. She looked back at him. I was wrong. Again, silence. Finally, Robert stepped forward. The bank would like to offer you your job back. No response. We'll restore your position immediately. Still nothing. We'll also provide additional compensation. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. Then he looked at the three people standing in his living room. Yesterday, he had been an employee. Today, they had come to his house. Not because they suddenly cared. Because they were afraid. He looked at Lily. She had stopped coloring. Her eyes were fixed on the visitors. He remembered her voice in the car. Should I stop drinking milk so you don't lose another job? Something inside him settled. He turned back toward the executives. Then he spoke quietly. No. The words seemed to surprise all three of them. The chairman blinked. No. Ethan shook his head. I won't be coming back. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Genevieve whispered. We can fix this. He looked at his daughter. Then back at the CEO. His voice was calm. Steady. No. He took a slow breath. She'll remember yesterday for the rest of her life. And no amount of money could change that. No one spoke. The room was so quiet that Ethan could hear the ticking of the old clock above the fireplace. Genevieve looked at Lily. The little girl had returned to her drawing, but she wasn't coloring anymore. She was simply holding the blue crayon in her hand. The CEO swallowed. For the first time in years, she felt something she usually ignored. Regret. I'm truly sorry, she said softly. Ethan believed she meant it. That was the strange thing. The woman standing in his living room no longer looked cold or powerful. She looked tired. Almost broken. But some wounds couldn't be undone by an apology. The chairman stepped forward. Mr. Calloway, if this is about trust, we're prepared to do whatever it takes to earn it back. Ethan gave a small, sad smile. That's the problem. What do you mean? He looked at the elderly man. You think this is about money? No one answered. He continued. Yesterday my daughter learned that being sick can make people angry at you. Lily looked up. She learned that asking for milk can make a grown-up lose his job. The chairman lowered his eyes. And she learned that talking about her mother can make a room go silent. No one knew what to say. Ethan looked at Genevieve. You asked security to remove an 8-year-old child. The words landed heavily. I know, she whispered. Do you? Her eyes filled with tears. Because she suddenly did. For all her success, all her titles, all her rules, she had never stopped to imagine what the world looked like through the eyes of a little girl who missed her mother. Lily quietly climbed off the couch. She walked to her father and slipped her hand into his. Genevieve looked at her. I'm sorry, she said. The little girl stared at her for several seconds. Then she asked the question no one in the room was prepared for. Are you lonely? Silence. Complete silence. Genevieve blinked. What? Lily tilted her head. My teacher says people are mean when their hearts hurt. The room seemed to stop. The chairman slowly sat down. Robert covered his mouth. And for the first time in many years, Genevieve Sterling began to cry. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quiet tears. My father used to say kindness makes people weak, she whispered. Lily thought about that. Then she shook her head. My mommy said kindness makes people brave. The tears came faster. Because somehow, the child she had humiliated was comforting her. Ethan gently squeezed his daughter's hand. At that moment, he understood something. This wasn't a victory. No one had one. This was simply the moment when one wounded heart recognized another. After a long silence, Ethan looked at the executives. The accounts will still be moved. No one argued. But I hope yesterday changes this bank. The chairman nodded slowly. It already has. And for the first time since arriving at the house, no one was thinking about $100 million anymore. They were thinking about a little girl and a carton of milk. 3 months later, spring arrived in Indianapolis. The trees outside Ethan's house were turning green again. The long winter had finally passed. Inside the kitchen, Lily sat at the table drawing another picture. This one showed a large building with flowers in front. Above it, she had written in careful, uneven letters. The Elena Foundation. Daddy, she called. Does Mom's name look right? Ethan looked over her shoulder and smiled. It looks perfect. She grinned. The Elena Foundation had opened only 2 weeks earlier. It helped single parents who suddenly found themselves alone. It paid for childcare. Bought school supplies. Covered emergency medical bills. And every Friday, volunteers delivered groceries to families who needed them. Including milk. Especially milk. The idea had come from Lily. One evening, she had asked. What if another little girl gets hungry? Ethan had no answer for that. So they built something. Something Elena would have loved. A soft knock came at the door. Ethan opened it and found Carl standing on the porch. The former security guard smiled. I brought cookies. Lily ran forward. Mr. Carl. She hugged him. His eyes watered immediately. He had become one of the foundation's first volunteers. The bank had reinstated him with full pay after the board investigated the incident, but he had chosen early retirement instead. I like this job better, he often said. A few moments later, another car pulled into the driveway. Lily looked through the window. It's the flower lady. Ethan smiled. Genevieve Sterling stepped out of her car carrying a small potted rosebush. A lot had changed in 3 months. The board had removed her as CEO. Not because of the money. But because, as the chairman had put it, we forgot we serve people. She had accepted the decision without argument. And every Saturday since then, she had volunteered at the foundation. No cameras. No speeches. Just work. She entered the house slowly. I hope I'm not late. You're right on time, Ethan said. Lily pointed at the plant. Is that from Mommy's garden? Genevieve smiled. If that's okay. The little girl nodded enthusiastically. Together, they walked outside. Near the back porch stood a small garden Elena had planted years ago. Her roses were beginning to bloom again. Genevieve carefully placed the new flower into the soil. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lily looked up at the sky. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. She held his hand. Mom would be proud, right? The question seemed to drift into the warm spring air. Ethan looked at the garden. At the foundation they had built. At the people standing beside them. Then he looked at his daughter. The little girl who had lost so much and still chose kindness. He smiled. I think she already is. Lily smiled back. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing. 3 people holding hands. And above them, a woman with wings. At the bottom she had written. Kindness makes people brave. Ethan felt tears in his eyes. He looked up toward the bright afternoon sky. Some promises take a lifetime to keep. Others begin with something as small as a carton of milk. Hello, my dear friends. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and over the years I've learned something important. Wealth can protect a child, but kindness can heal a heart. If this story touched you today, please leave a comment and let me know you're here. Hug the people you love while you still can, and don't forget to subscribe to our little family story corner. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and sweet dreams.